If we start at the beginning of my career as a poet, it would be with Justified Dreaminess, which are hardbound copies now, and there's softbacks, and I kind of put that book a lot of places, but it was only really the center of attention for a brief moment. I think the success in it was that people began to see that I was a serious poet. I don't think the reception was poor. I think the people that read it generally enjoy it. It was well crafted, put together. It took 11 years, and it still reconciles deeply within the reader and me, between our understanding that I was a more of an artist with language than an actual poet. And then with the art of language after that was the novella I slid under the rug. Because it wasn't fully formulated, it was more developing the art of fiction, and that's The Humility of Three Carvers. I didn't really do any coy marketing. I didn't print off any books. I kind of left it as is and moved on back to poetry with Dancing with Strangers, which that book took about a year and a half to really put together. And Dancing with Strangers was a response to The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. I always wondered how he used she in his poems as a man, and then I realized I was doing it. And then 20 Songs of Innocence and A Song of Vitality is a response to Pablo Neruda. After Neruda and that response, I moved on to Self-Reconcile. But 20 Songs of Innocence and A Song of Vitality, I guess if we're going to touch on that real quick, that only took a month to write. It was very quick, brief vignettes about what was going on in my transition from blue-collar America into being a poet and novelist. After that was Self-Reconcile, and that took a year to write, and it was a very important book to start to lean off of substance and other outlets I had that weren't really beneficial to the greater good or the causes of longevity in life, that I no longer needed to destroy myself to create art and literature. Then Nova Orta Mundial is actually a funnier book. Some of the jokes, I think, in it will make you cringe, which are good jokes, and you will laugh in it too at points. Both of those books, Self-Reconcile and Nova Orta Mundial, use my own photography as the covers, which make them unique to my work in the field of photography. Self-Reconcile is at my grandfather's funeral. And Nova Orta Mundials is at Anderson Apple Orchard in Mooresville. It's of their raspberries. Then I did a brief spoken word album, just to kind of showcase that I do know how to hit a note on occasion. It was a very complex musical album because I was trying so hard to keep it simple in music and literature. And I think the overbearing tones of deconstructing what I knew in both fields made it interesting. Then I went on the road to get clean. I didn't go on the road to party like Kerouac or a rock star. I had to clean myself out, and then 5 years later, between all the books, help from professionals, I'm actually a year sober, but when I went on the road, it was actually to not live and die as a closeted addict of cocaine and opium at my parents' house. No one knew I was using those quite frequently to make ends meet, and I would drink too, so it seemed normalized because no one knew I was doing all that. And I could function because I am smarter than most, but I wanted to get clean to see what else I could create. So at 30, I was on the road to get clean. I did a Met Verum, which was my transition into a more philosophical stance on phenomenology with psychology, and it transitioned into what my mind opened up in my brainwaves when it went from a Met Verum to nihilism in time to Principia Logica was the final manifestation of that, which the title of Principia Logica is the correct title because it's the principles of logic in the field of new metric. And I think people have told me poetry is about discovery, and I think what I discovered in the field of mathematics was truly revolutionary. I think it gets harder for people to hear my name and not associate poetry, mathematics, and novels. And I think the mathematics part was deeply inspired by David Foster Wallace and his work in the field, because I've read and studied Wallace a lot. Not just Wallace, but Fitzgerald and Kerouac and all these guys. And I think the longevity of my career was to understand that you have to be really talented with mathematics to be good at certain fields, and fiction doesn't go without that. So by the time I got from Met Verum to Principia Logica, I'd also written fiction too. And Capulets was kind of like the humorous book that I took with The Humility of Three Carvers and put it into the Evan Jones novel, Love Has No Wave. And I did that in honor of Fernando Pessoa and Bob Dylan, who didn't use their real names. Like, it's Robert Zimmerman and Fernando Pessoa to me, but he put it under Bernardo Soares. So I put it under Evan Jones, and then I put a memoir in mathematics under Evan Jones to de-escalate the serious side of mathematics. It was also because I was having my third nervous breakdown, which I had them at all the stereotypical bigoted ages of 17, 26, and 34, briefly at 20. And I think it's very normal for creative types to have those breakdowns. But then at the end of this long list of dedicated time was Indra, which took most of the poetry and organized it to kind of do a final send-off to my youth as a poet. Because much more of my adult life, I will always explore that path, but it's so regulated with how I do it now that most of the work I'll do is mathematics and novels. I'm not really a boring type of either. More the idea that there's an audience finally, and between the beginning of a career of the last 7 or 8 years, the next step is to start selling more books and doing more speeches and talks about sobriety and what it did to improve my life and my work. So I think some of the work I've done in all these fields makes me unique. It also makes me a philosopher, I think, which is the jack of all trades.